Welcome friends. In the last lecture we introduced a new Azure service called Azure Container Instances that can spin up the container. If you have missed that video, please watch it now. We are providing the link of that video in the description below. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please do it now. In this video we will have this ACI in action. So, stay tuned.
Let us understand what we are going to do today. We have the Docker image in our Docker public repository, and we are going to use a private network to run our Azure MySQL database to keep it a secure and separate one. Now we are going to create our Azure cloud instance again in a private net, and in that particular network, it can access the database internally with the Azure private network. And we're going to create an application gateway, and that particular application gateway can able to access these microservices that we are going to create inside the Docker container running in Azure Container Instance. And this particular application gateway is client facing, so the client or any user can access this particular API gateway to communicate with the database. So our application was written in Python, and we have containerized, we have built the image, and we had pushed that particular image in Docker repository, and we discussed all these things, how we did that and how we made this particular application in our earlier lectures in containers and Kubernetes sections. So we are recommending you to go back and play those videos if you have just missed them. So let's get started. Now friends, this is our Azure Management Web Console. And we are first going to create a virtual network. So let's create the virtual network. And we can provide a good name like my app net. And then next, let's review the security part. We are fine with unencrypted virtual network, but I mean, it is recommended to have it encrypted as well. Firewall and DDoS network protection. So all these things are very much recommended to have checked, but for have the simplicity in this particular demo, we are just keeping them unchecked. Now let's go to the subnet part, and there is one default subnet already created. Let us assign or create a couple of subnets. So one subnet we're going to create for MyDB or database subnet, maybe we can say database subnet. So one subnet we're going to create for DB subnet, and let's add it. Add another subnet. This subnet we're going to create for ACI, Azure Container Instance subnet. And another subnet we're going to create for API gateway. So that will be for API gateway subnet. And let's create this one. Let's review, and then it is started to validate the configuration ARM, and we are going to create this one. All right, our subnet is created. So let's go to this resource, and we can see our subnets and virtual network is ready. Now let's go to this dashboard, and let us create this Azure database for MySQL Server. So we can create a new database. And why we are going to create the MySQL database? Because we are having the application that is actually going to connect to a MySQL database server, and That is the only reason we are creating this MySQL database. Now we are going to create the flexible server. And if you have missed the video where we have created the Docker image, which actually containing this Python app, you are recommended to watch this particular video so that you can have the understanding like what is the architecture of this particular application, how this application connects to our SQL database. So now we need to provide a name, so we can say MyDB for learning light. And we are fine. Basically, we are not enabling the high availability and other stuff. So it's just a simple database we are going to create. Just only we need to assure that the database is secure and going to be created in a secure environment. So we're going to say admin user as user one, and the password can be test sum at the rate 12345 6, and password again test sum at the rate 12345 6. So we need to make sure our database is private so that no one outside world can access this particular database. So here we are going to create the database inside our new virtual network that we have just created, MyAppNet. And here we have created a couple of subnet, and the one that we created for database, you can choose that one. So DB subnet. So this particular database cannot be accessed from outside world. So that we have just made sure by providing the private access. Good. Let's go to security. There is nothing we need to provide. So this database creation will take some time. So we will be back once the database will be created. Till then, I'm just pausing my video. Okay, our deployment is complete. Let's go to this resource. Now our database is ready, and this particular database is in private network that we have created just now. Now, server name, and we will use this server name in our ACI. So let's go to ACI and let's open this Azure Container Instance dashboard, and let us create one container instance. Now we are going to use our Docker image learning light / my app, which is in Docker Hub repository. And we are going to use the latest version v1.1 in our container instance. And now we are going to provide one app name, and maybe we can say my app as a container name. And we are fine with the availability zone. And this time we are going to say it's not in Azure Container Registry or the sample images, but it's the other registry, and this is a public registry, and the registry is docker.io / learning light / my app and v1.1. And next go to the networking section, and this time we're going to say it's a private Docker container, and this is also be created inside the MyAppNet network that we have created. So we cannot, as we are using this as a private, we will not get any public IP address for this container, and this container as well as be the private, just like the database. So our container is also in a private network, and this time we are going to use ACI subnet. And now we are going to say the port number Our Docker port number is 5000 because at this 5000 port, our Streamlit application is going to be running. At this 5000 port, our Streamlit application within this Python code will be running. Next is environment variable. So if you check this particular Docker repository, we can see the list of environment variables which are needed to run this particular Docker image. So I'm just going to copy and pasting these variables. So it's db user, my root password, db host, and finally the db port. Now db port is 3306. That's the default port. And this root password, we used test sum @12345 db user, we used user 1. And this particular database, we can go to this database and we can copy the server name and we can paste over here. So these all our environment variables, and then we can go to next and we can review this configuration, and the validation is running and the validation is passed, and we're going to create. All right, so our deployment is complete. Now our container is ready. Let's go to this my app container instance. And we can see our IP address is assigned, that is a private IP, and as we did not keep it open to public, we did not get the public IP. Now let's go to this container and let's see the logs. We can see the log is running well and there is no error inside it. And we can see the properties. So whatever we mentioned over there in the configuration, time of configuration, time of creation, we can see them in the properties. All right. So now let's go to API gateway and then see our container is actually ready and it is communicating with the database. But both the database and the container instance are in private network, and from the external world, we cannot access our app. So we are going to keep an application gateway in front of this Azure container instance so that we can able to access the app from the private VNet. So let's create the application gateway. Okay, so we need to provide the application gateway name. So we can say my API, and we are going to keep the standard V2 tier and enable the auto scaling, and minimum instance count we can keep as 0 and maximum instance count is 10. Everything we are going to keep this as default. Now over here in this network section, we are going to keep this in my appnet, and we can use the API subnet, API gateway subnet for this my appnet, for this application gateway. Now let's go to this front-end configuration, and we can have one public IP with us. So we can say my IP, and we can keep this okay. And then we are going to keep the backend configuration. And we don't have any backend pool. So let us create one backend so we can keep this as my BE. And this backend pool is basically the IP address of the container instance that we got 10.0.0.4. I'm going to add this one. So we have front end and we have the back end, but we need to have the routing rules as well so that the front end can route the traffic to the back end. So we can say my rule, and priority we can assign like 100, and listener name we can say my listener, and we can keep this port as 80. For the backend target, we can say the backend is my BE, and we can use a backend setting, and maybe we can keep the backend setting as my backend setting as a name, and backend port is definitely 5000, and we are not going to enable these cookie-based affinity and connection training for now. And we are going to create the add new, and this is the backend setting we have created. Now we are going to keep this as routing rule. So once we are done, let us go to this tagging, and for now we are fine with tagging. Let's review and create this application gateway. The validation is passed, and we're going to create this application gateway. After a couple of minutes, our deployment is complete. So let's go to this resource, and we can see this my API application gateway is ready. And here we got the public IP address. So this particular public IP address is in front of this ACI, and through this particular IP address, we can access our application. So let's see. We can see our Streamlit application is coming, and first time it will take some time because it will be cold started, and we can see our second version of this particular app is running absolutely fine. So we can enter the serial number 1, and we can say Azure API gateway as an item, and we can insert the item, and the item is successfully inserted. Also, we can provide the serial number 2, and maybe we can say some ACI as an item and insert the item, and the second item is successfully inserted. And we can click show item, and we can see our inserted data is showing correctly. We can keep item number 3, and this time we can say MySQL Azure database, and we can insert that item as well, and we can show that. So in this particular lecture, we saw how we can keep the ACI and the MySQL database in a private network within a private subnet, but we can use the power of API gateway to access that private content of the application and the database, and can be exposed to external world, so that external world can communicate with application gateway, but the application itself in the container within the secure network, and as well as the database in the secure network are not accessible from external world so that they get secured in the Azure environment. So thank you for watching this video. We will see you in the next video with some more exciting new features. So till then, goodbye and thank you.